Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending today's press briefing. Before I start, I'd like to introduce the persons at the head table. My name is Bruce Blake. I'm the first Vice President of the Cayman Islands Football Association, and I'm also the chairperson of the local organizing committee for the upcoming CONCACAF Under-15 tournament. To my immediate right, we have the Deputy Premier and the Minister of District Administration, Tourism, Transport, Honorable Moses Kirkconnell. Thank you, sir, for being here today. And to his right, we have the Minister of Health, Youth, Sports, and Culture, the Honorable Osborne Borden. Thank you, sir. And to his right, we have Mr. Mark Scotland, who is also a member of the local organizing committee. Thank you. I'd just like to go into the tournament itself. As has been advertised, the tournament will be held in the Cayman Islands from the 13th to the 25th of August. Of course, this is the inaugural CONCACAF Under-15 Boys Championship, and it will encompass 24 teams from throughout the Caribbean and Central America. I'd just like to list out the teams that have confirmed their participation in the tournament. We have the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Honduras, Haiti, Aruba, Guatemala, Curacao, Martinique, Bahamas, Dominican Republic, Guadeloupe, Puerto Rico, Saint Martin, Grenada, Saint Martin, El Salvador, U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent, Bermuda, Belize, St. Kitts, and Antigua and Barbuda. So as you can see, we have some of the top football nations in the Caribbean and Central America that will be attending this tournament. But in addition to the tournament itself, we're also hosting a referees course during the tournament and a coaching course during the tournament. So we expect to have around about 700 or 800 persons on island directly related to this tournament during this period. With that said, I'd like to thank the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Sports for their contribution in assisting us with getting this tournament up and running. And without their assistance, of course, none of this would be possible. Because we'll be actually playing the tournament at 3 venues on island, but we're also using all of the other venues as practice venues. And we would like to thank the ministers for their assistance in ensuring that our facilities are up to CONCACAF standards for this tournament. Just a little bit about the tournament format. We have 4 groups of 6. And the first round, and then after the first round, the top 4 teams will go on to the semifinals, and then we'll have the finals. For the first round, we've decided that we're not going to charge any entrance fee for any of the games, so they'll be free to everyone. The semifinals is going to be $10 CI. Children 12 and under will be free, and the finals will be $15 CI. Again, children 12 and under is free. With that said, I'd just like to turn it over to the Minister of Tourism to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I want to congratulate Bruce Blake and Mark Scotland this morning on all the hard work they've done to put this tournament together. I also want to mention that this is a vision of the CONCACAF president, which is our Caymanian, Mr. Jeffrey Webb. And this is his view towards strengthening the game, football itself, at the youth levels. And I think it's a real tribute to him that he's starting this tournament in the Cayman Islands. We're very excited about partnering with this group, CONCACAF, to have this tournament, and we envision this as an investment in the future, because our goal for tourism in the Cayman Islands is partnerships, and there's no better way and no better organization to partner with than an organization that's actually building the foundation through youth programs. We have committed to do all we can to make this a successful tournament, and we look into, from the tourism, sports tourism standpoint, this as opportunity. In our conversations, we've talked about being able to host these tournaments on 3, 4, 5 times a year, and we want to make it very clear to CONCACAF that we will do what we can to continue to build this relationship, that the Cayman Islands themselves benefit from this and helps us grow our tourism product in a very positive way. It's also prudent to mention at this point that the timing for this comes at a time when tourism is basically down. So we're using this, and I thank CONCACAF for the timing of it, to actually lift up some of our valleys, our low points in tourism, and that'll help all the operators as well. I'm quite happy to take questions after this, but I think at this point I'd like to turn it over to the Minister of Sports, Mr. Osborne.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colonel, and thank you to the panel. Congratulations to the organizing committee, Bruce and Mark, and particular thanks again to Mr. Webb, our own CONCACAF president, who has the vision to bring tournaments such as this to the Cayman Islands. It certainly is a win-win situation for us, not only hosting these teams, but all of the tourism aspect that goes along with it and the experience that's brought to Cayman for our own local teams. Certainly, as Minister of Youth and Sport, it is particularly pleasing for me to see the return of international football to the Cayman Islands in the form of a youth tournament. And I believe that this will create a stimulus to our young footballers to continue to set new goals and new for achievement. We already have a number of them overseas on scholarships, and I think this is certainly, at the end of this, I'm sure you'll see a lot more interest and a lot better level of play. I'm also grateful to the many volunteers that have made this happen, in particular our sports department and the hardworking staff, Mr. Flynn Bush and the others there who have struggled, pushed really hard in a short space of time to make this a reality, because there are certain facilities that are needed to host a tournament of this nature. I'm sure that the volunteer coaches and administrators of football will also look forward to the opportunity to get a measure as to where our youth football is on home soil, because in the past we've had to travel overseas at great expense to get this type of experience. Here the experience is coming to us, and it is going to be, I'm sure, very productive for us. I would like to really encourage the public to come out and support the tournament in the couple of weeks that it will be going on. You've heard that the admission, is it free, Bruce?
Yeah, for the first round.
For the first round. So there's no excuse why us locals don't have an opportunity to come out and see some really good football. And trust me, youngsters, although under 15, you will see a really high level of play. And the facilities are being prepared to the best that we can to make sure that all that part is in order to contribute to the level of play. We're going to have, as you heard, a number of people in the vicinity of 700-800 people on island, so that's going to be exciting, and we trust that will stimulate our local economy. So once again, in closing, I'd just like to say congratulations to CIFA in securing the CONCACAF tournament, and thanks again from Mr. Webb, and we look forward to, over the years, next year and years to come, many more of these type of tournaments in the Cayman Islands. Thank you.
Thank you to all the previous speakers. Certainly a pleasure for me to be here this morning as well with the Deputy Premier, the Honourable Moses Colonel, Honourable Osborne Body Minister of Sports, and Mr. Bruce Blake, who's the co-chair of the local organising committee. I also want to commend the other co-chair of the committee as well, Ms. Charmaine Moss, who's quite busy in the preparations for the tournament, and together the two of them are leading quite a large committee in putting the tournament together. I'll speak to the point about volunteers later on. The Minister for Sports mentioned that, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit later on as well. Certainly, it is a major undertaking to host a tournament. 24 national teams. When we think about that, not many other competitions host 24 national football teams at once. And the only bigger competition you can think of might be the World Cup, where it's now 32 teams. but to host 24 at one time is quite a significant undertaking, and to do it for the first time here in Cayman. So we certainly want to commend the president of CONCACAF, Mr. Jeffrey Webb, for his vision in starting this tournament. It's a major competition going forward for development of football in this region. Minister for Sport mentioned the level of football. Well, if we just mention the football that took place here over the weekend, when our own national under-15 team played 2 practice matches against the club team from Honduras, the level of football was very exciting. It was the first time our team had played together at that level as well, and so certainly showed signs of very good things to come from our under-15 team, and again, encouragement for persons to come out and support this tournament, because not only an opportunity to see our team, but 23 other teams from around the region. Certainly, competitions like this go a long way when you're talking about implementation of a country's sports policy, because these are the tournaments, like the Minister for Sport said, give incentive and encouragement to other youngsters. And again, that was evidence over the weekend, and I saw many youngsters out there watching those games, and we can just imagine what the kind of enthusiasm that'll be around this tournament for all of our youngsters here in Cayman, and again, encourage them all to come out. I want to say that obviously, like we said, a tournament like this is a huge undertaking, and one of the areas I want to speak to specifically this morning is the area of volunteers. Like I said, the Minister for Sports mentioned that, in thanking those persons who have volunteered so far. Certainly, what I want to take the opportunity now is to encourage others to come out to volunteer. We had a meeting on Tuesday evening, the first volunteer meeting, where we had a number of persons already come out and sign up in very important areas. We need liaison officers, we need ushers, we need persons to help us with ticketing and merchandising, marketing and sponsorship. We need security, people to work at the gates, administrative assistants, accreditation, persons to help with hospitality, communications and media, medical. Translators is a major area this year for us, because we have teams visiting that are Spanish and French speaking. And I'm not sure of any other languages, maybe Dutch, but at least Spanish and French speaking for now, and we certainly need a number of translators. Information technology support is also needed. So we're needing anywhere around 200 volunteers to make this tournament successful. And in fact, we're not just calling them volunteers, we're looking for ambassadors, ambassadors from Cayman, because once you volunteer for this tournament, you are in fact going to be an ambassador. You'll undergo some training, receive uniforms and gear to wear during the tournament as well. But we all want to work together. CONCACAF is putting on the tournament. SIFA is the host here, but certainly without volunteers, it's going to be very difficult to put on a tournament. So we're using this opportunity as well to encourage persons to come forward and volunteer. You can contact the Football Association office, and we'll also put some information in the media and the press about how you can get involved in volunteering and making this tournament a success here for us in Cayman, because it's not just the Football Association that's organizing this, but we indeed need the help of all the the community, the Cayman Islands community, but in particular in this instance, volunteers. With those brief remarks, again, I want to thank you all for coming this morning, and again thank the government, the Deputy Premier, the Minister of Sports for their support in making this competition a reality. Obviously, like Bruce said, would not be possible without the government support. Thank you. At this time, any questions?
Yeah, June, Radio Cayman. Mr. Blake, just with regards to the format of the tournament, I know you touched on this briefly. 4 groups of 6, top 4 advancing to the semis, so no round of 16, no quarterfinals, nothing like that?
Quarterfinals, no. And just to mention that the games will be 4:30, 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. the first round. Yes.
So in terms of finding that top 4, it's just going to be based on points.
The winners of each group.
The winners of each group go on to the semis.
Okay. Okay. Yes, 4 groups of 6. Okay, that makes sense. What was the other question I had here? Forgive me. Volunteers. Mr. Scotland, you mentioned 200 plus is what you're after. Do you know where we are right now in terms of volunteers? You'd mentioned some had come forward already.
We're well on our way to that number. We probably have anywhere from about 60 to 70 signed up already. We have forms that you can sign up and indicate the areas that you want to volunteer in, and then obviously there'll be some level of training, so to speak, for each for some of the areas depending on what you're going to volunteer in. And as I said, we're just encouraging as many people. We know the response has been growing over the past few weeks, but we want to use the media to get that get information out there and encourage others to volunteer.
And if I can just add to that, I mean, with most other countries, they have a big retirement population. They have a big university population, so they draw from these groups when they have in these kinds of tournaments. But of course, the vast majority of our population work, and for games starting at 4:30, we need to have more volunteers than normal because we probably need to rotate them throughout the tournament, and especially with a tournament that go each day. So we can't rely on just one pool of volunteers to take us through the tournament. I think we need to do, one or two or three shifts to ensure that we have adequate coverage.
And just one more for Minister Kirkconnell with regards to tourism. I know Mr. Scotland mentioned 24 teams. It's a pretty big tournament. Can you speak to some of the tourism revenue? Because obviously with that many teams, you're going to get the fan contingents and all the players as well. So can you talk to the tourism revenue in that regard?
Quite happy to speak to it. 800 players basically. Multiply that by friends and family. I think you'd probably be safe in saying it'll draw around 3,000 people to Cayman. Again, I say it's a very good time for the draw because of the tourism product itself being a little bit slow in that August time period. I think it also gives opportunities to cross the board tourism properties themselves, because you're going to have executives and high worth individuals coming to watch this that will need some of our 5-star properties, but you will have all the way down to all the properties. There will be a market and a need across the board for all of our tourism properties to be able to host these individuals. I believe that the repeat out of this is tremendous, because through this partnership, once we get the exposure that they come here for a tournament, then they have the opportunity to return on a vacation for themselves. They benefit. The benefit itself, from the standpoint of going forward, is we want to make sure that this tournament we get our house in order, and our fields, which the sports minister can speak to, but to make sure CONCACAF certifies all of our fields and look at us as a destination that they can continue to use. So we are really, again, working hard with all of the partners, especially the two here at the table today, to make sure we get through that process. And then from the standpoint of the partnership, we can go out and look at how we can add value to the next tournaments and to make sure that they are successful.
And also, just to put that in perspective, the number of persons per team is 23 persons per team, and if you also multiply friends and family, but also the CONCACAF staff is about 30, the referees about 30, the coaches that are coming in for the coaching course, is about 30. So there'll be a significant amount of persons on island during the tournament. But I think the spend also starts before that, because we're in the process of arranging with Cayman Airways to put on special charters to one or two of the Eastern Caribbean destinations to actually bring the teams to and from the Cayman Islands. So from Cayman Airways' perspective, I mean it's a bonanza.
If I can finish up the answer to that question, if you look at the model that this starts to move us forward with, this shows partnerships and how everybody wins from it, and how we can use these types of partnerships to grow our tourism product itself.
Is that something you look to in other sports as well, beyond football?
Well, we look at it in other sports and in other events, whether it's a musical event, whether it's conferences that would bring down speakers that are world known for a certain field, but to partner with the community itself and bring tourism for specific events.
I think if I could say, just add to that, you've already seen the benefits of the Cayman Invitational and the volleyball Norseca tournaments and squash and I'm sure one of these days we'll have basketball and all the others. Minister Colonel and I leave tomorrow for the Island Games, and that's one of the reasons we're going together, to really look at the benefits of sports tourism, talk to the people in Bermuda who are a similar size island to us in many ways, and to see if one day we may actually be able to host the Island Games. It's going to take some infrastructure. I don't want you to go and say that we're going to host it the next year or anything like that, or in the next 2 years, but it's something that we can work towards. And with CONCACAF as well, there are going to be facilities, permanent facilities that are going to be needed, which we don't have right now. But I'm sure that CONCACAF is willing to work with the government, and together, we can get this to a state where we can host, future tournaments. There are some tournaments that are going to require more extensive preparation than what we have for this one. But my ministry staff and the department has worked extremely hard along with the CIFA reps to get ready for this one.
Just in terms of on the field, maybe on Mr. Blake, what are your expectations for the Cayman boys in this tournament? There's obviously a lot of tough teams in the region. What kind of chances do they have?
Well, I mean, on the 15 program has been together for the last 3 months now. For those that came out and watched the matches against CD Victoria, I think you would have seen a very high level of football. We won the first game 2-0, and we then experimented with the team and format, and unfortunately we lost the second game 3-0, but we did we did play very well. I'm pleased with the program. I'm pleased with Arden Rivers as the technical director and his coaching staff. I think we're going in the right direction, and this under 15 group is being prepared for the under 17 World Cup qualifiers, which would happen next year. In terms of our prospects, I think it looks good for the first round. I don't see no reason why we can't get out of the first round. And the only thing that was probably, I would say, probably hamper us is the back-to-back games. I don't think our boys are used to that, but that is something that they will have to prepare for. And again, with the CD Victoria game, we played Saturday and Sunday to get them used to playing double headers. But the main thing is, how do you recover from playing back-to-back games? That is something that the coaching staff, along with their physio and doctors and all that, would have to ensure that the boys are ready in that event, because 5 games in the space of 7 days is a lot of or 8 days is a lot of games. And as long as their fitness levels are high, and as long as they can recover from the back-to-back games, I think we have a very good chance of getting out the first round.
And just quickly on the tourism aspect again, do you have a sort of partner hotels on this? Where are the teams going to stay?
Well, I think I can answer that. The teams are staying at the Holiday Inn and the Marriott, and the officials are staying at the Westin. Of course, with football, the officials can't stay in the same hotels as the teams, so we have to split them out. So the majority of the teams are staying at the Holiday Inn. We probably have the super majority of the Holiday Inn during the period of the tournament, and then the Marriott has come on board, and the Westin. And I would like to thank those partners, because they've been more than gracious to us, and they've bent over backwards to accommodate us and our requests. As you know, with these kinds of tournaments, the rules and regulations are set by CONCACAF, and we have to ensure that we abide by them. And not only was this a good this tournament is a good measure for the government, but also for our service providers. These tournaments, and you can go online to the FIFA website and you'll see all the regulations for all of their international tournaments, but they have very strict requirements. And we're happy that the service providers that we reached out to are trying to accommodate us to make sure that we meet all of the requirements of CONCACAF.
And can I check whether because some of the players are coming from relatively poorer countries, and I'm just wondering whether the hotels have been kind and sort of dropped their rates in particular for the players. I was thinking more than anything.
No,
I mean, obviously officials and.
No, but this is a CONCACAF tournament, and CONCACAF sponsors the tournament.
Oh, so the countries are not expected to, the kids, the
No,
local
only
teams
thing
don't
that
have to pay.
the only thing that the countries pay for is their transportation to the tournament. Everything else is the local organizing committee or CONCACAF that deals with the expenditures, and it's significant. I mean, just considering the amount of water and Gatorade that we need to provide for the teams. I mean, I saw the bill for water and Gatorade yesterday, and it's probably like $30,000 or something like that. So, you know, it is a very expensive undertaking.
Obviously, Vince, that's part of CONCACAF's commitment to development, and like you said, this is a development tournament. So, if they give the opportunity to, you know, as Bruce has said, once the teams have made their transportation and found their way here, accommodation, meals, and everything else is you know, taken care of while they're here, and you're here for you know, when you look at the groups, 6 teams, 5 games, that's certainly quite a good experience for all the teams that are visiting. You know, not only the ones that are going to make it out of those groups, but to play 5 games in 8 days is a significant amount of development experience that those teams are going to be gaining.
But I'd just like to add that because we're responsible for some of the expenditure, we are reaching out to sponsors to get as many sponsors as possible to try to offset the cost of hosting such a tournament. Like Mark said, the only tournament that's bigger than this is the World Cup on a national level. And we basically would have the same kind of expenditures that, you know, any other tournament would have. And Cayman is, you know, more expensive than nearly every destination in the world, which makes it that much harder.
So how much are you having to put into this?
Well, we're in the process of finalizing the budget right now, but hotel alone is the spend on hotel is what, 1 point something million or something like that.
But is that what you
Well, that's for CONCACAF, but that again, that's the kind of spend that we're talking about.
But there are some responsibilities of the local host, as Bruce has said. So there is a budget from the local perspective that we're, as he noted, we're seeking sponsorship to help to cover some of that.
Can I just clarify what kind of figures could we say this would bring to the local economy? I mean, if you're talking about $1 million hotel bill in total, what kind of money we're looking at investing that Cayman's going to benefit from as a whole, as an economy?
Well, let us just look at it from the standpoint that that's what the hotel bill is, and we'll probably be safe to multiply that by 4 when you get friends and family, airlift, tour operators, and so let's say we're at $4 to $5 million, and then if you want to do a multiplier effect on that for the trickle down into the economy, you quickly see that this is a $20 million event for the Cayman Islands. And now back into that and start thinking of the real opportunity if we could do 4 of these a year, what this means to the Cayman Islands. So I think you start seeing what the vision is from Mr. Blake and Mr. Scotland and Mr. Webb of bringing this to the Cayman Islands. Then it's a tremendous opportunity for the youth themselves to interact with the other. These are going to be the World Cuppers that are going to be playing here. So our youth are going to be on the same stage, and let's hope that some of our youth wind up there in a very optimistic way. But this gives them a path forward, and they start globally knowing all of these players because they've been to their home. And then from the standpoint of Cayman, or the Cayman Islands itself, we get to showcase our island. We get to showcase our home. And we always say that if you come here once, you're coming back.
And this is a prelude to a bigger event. I mean, we're hosting the women's under 20 World Cup qualifiers for CONCACAF in January. And I mean, that is the event. That's going to be shown on Fox and Univision, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, you could never pay for that kind of advertising. I mean, the tournament will be shown around the world, you know. So it isn't necessarily only about the tournament itself. I mean, they will be showcasing the Cayman Islands on an international level. So this is what this tournament is preparing us for.
Will there be any television coverage for this particular tournament?
No, there wouldn't be any television coverage for this tournament. It'll be for the women's under 20 tournament.
CITN.
So you talked about how CONCACAF, this is a CONCACAF-sponsored event, but that there will be some responsibilities locally. What is this going to cost the local government?
It's cost us in the region of $200,000 to prepare the facilities.
And what does that go toward?
What did it go for? All of the locker rooms and changing rooms and all that stuff, and preparing the fields. That's the expense. That was the budget for it.
Additional changing room facilities were required, and some other upgrades to the fields, because obviously, as Bruce has said, when you look at the schedules, we wouldn't have had venues where you had 3 games in a day before. So where you have 4:30, 6 o'clock, and 7:30 games, you have to have additional changing rooms so teams can go in and prepare to come out for the second and third games and so on. So some additional works were required, and as we've said, the government has supported that, and it's been a joint effort then to host a tournament.
Mr. Kirkconnell, you had mentioned early on about the operators, taxis, buses, I'm guessing is what you were talking about. Is that going to be the main mode of transportation for the teams and the fans and the officials?
What we're doing for this tournament, because one of the things on island is that we don't necessarily have sufficient transport and big enough transport for teams, because when teams travel, they want to travel together, but that isn't only the individuals. You got all of the equipment that go with it, and they all want to do that together. With most countries, you would get one of those big buses that can hold 100 and something people, and it would be good if we had 30 of those on island that we can use for this tournament, but unfortunately we don't. What we're decided to do is that for the transportation to and from the airport to the hotels and back, and also for the transportation for the VIPs and all that, we will be using the various transportation companies on island and the various rent-a-car agencies. We probably need in the region of about 40, 50 rent-a-cars just to service this tournament. In order to transport the teams to and from practice and the matches, we're discussing with the operators of the school buses to see if we can use those for that mode of transportation.
Another question I had was, what, as far as medical staff present at all the games, what is CONCACAF's requirement, and can we meet that here?
Well, we're having difficulties at the moment trying to ensure that we have enough of the resources on island. But where we don't have the resources on island, we're bringing them in from overseas. Just for one example, we require about 12 massage tables in each changing room. Of course, we've tried different service providers on island to try to get 12 massage tables. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. So then we have to go to the States and buy those massage tables and bring them in. So where we're not able to have them provided locally, we'll have to get them from overseas. With medical staff, we're in discussions with various doctors, because the doctors have to be on call to attend to any situations at the hotel or the field. We're talking to the hospital in regards to ambulance services, and that's another issue that we're coming up against, where the tournament requires 1 ambulance per venue. Of course, we only have, I think, 4 ambulances on island, which makes it a little bit difficult. But where we're not able to use an ambulance, we'll talk to the fire service to see if we can have one of their vehicles. So we're working with what we have, and if there's anything that we don't have on island or someone can't provide to us, we'll get it from overseas. But getting stuff from overseas is the last option. We're trying to use as many of our local service providers, as many of our vendors as possible.
Last question from me, Mr. Bowden. Earlier, you had discussed partnering with CONCACAF in the future to build some facilities or make some improvements, I guess, to the local football infrastructure. What were you referring to? Like, what kind of facilities would we need?
Well, what we've put in place for this tournament are temporary facilities. We've used like prefab buildings, trailers, that type of stuff. What we're saying now, facilities could actually be built at the fields themselves, so that you have permanent structures to accommodate that.
Just one last one with regards to sponsorship. I know you'd mentioned obviously this is a massive CONCACAF event, but in terms of local sponsorship, can they get a piece of this? And if so, where do we stand in that regard?
Well, my colleague, Mr. Paul Macy, is dealing with sponsors. He actually has a gentleman from CONCACAF down at the moment, and they're going to talk to the various businesses in terms of sponsorship. We're basically trying to get as many sponsors on board to cover. You know, we have a vast amount of areas that they can get involved in. The sponsors, we're putting together a package for them where they get maximum exposure from this tournament. I mean, the games will be taped, and some of the games we're trying to get some of the games to be shown over the internet. So we're trying to get them maximum exposure, the value for their money. But we're talking to all of the big and small entities on the island to try to get as many of them to come on board as possible.
One last one. Is it right that next year there will be an under-15 girls tournament that will be held here as well?
Under 20.
In January, but will there also be a...
January is the under 20 women's World Cup qualifying, and that's been confirmed. CONCACAF has sent out the official notification on that. What we're thinking about is to have a girls under 15 tournament next year also, because we want to make sure that not only the boys have a development tournament, but the girls also have a development tournament. That hasn't received an official confirmation as yet, but that's what we're thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.